Hello, everybody. I'm Valerie Gilchrist, and I'm broadcasting from Augusta, Georgia. My broadcast is Esthers Purpose, and my guest today is Vicki Jones, and we'll talk about her a little bit later. But I want you to know that we are on WYTV7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Before I introduce Vicki, I want to say that WYTV7 is a nonprofit, and we do take donations that are used to broadcast not only nationally, but internationally. Our listeners are across the globe, and what our focus is to encourage individuals and families through our broadcasts. Through Esthers Purpose, listeners who have been or going through various trials of life, we want to encourage you to stay the course. So listening to my guest, I want to not only let them share with you what they went through, but also how they came through it in victory and in purpose. So now I want to introduce to you my guest today. I am so excited that she's with us. Her name is Vicki Jones. Vicki is she is a Baltimore-born social entrepreneur. Vicki's mission trip to Kenya in 2006 led her to establish Bahari, and if I mess that up, Vicki, correct it in just a moment, Bahari Sisters Inc. In 2012, Bahari empowers Kenyan women through economic, educational, and healthcare initiatives. The current projects include the Bahari Beekeeping Pilot Project in rural Kenya, a partnership that she has that provides products that the Kenyan women need for their female needs, the girls, awarding scholarships, supporting slum community cleanups, and erecting actually water filtration systems. I am so excited after getting all of that out, Miss Vicki. So how are you today?
I am great, Valerie. Thank you. Yeah, that was a mouthful, but thank you.
Okay, so everything I tore up, just fix it, because I don't know that I pronounced everything properly. Was it right?
Everything was right.
Woo!
Bahari,
Okay.
Bahari means ocean in Swahili.
Okay.
It's our connection to the women across the ocean. Yeah. So everything you said was correct. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. That's awesome. Because if I was going to mess it up, I was going to mess it up right now. So, well, I am so glad that you sacrificed your day today to come over here with us. I know it's a sacrifice, and I so appreciate it. So what I want to do, because we've introduced you now, what I want to do is I want to take you back. When we had our conversation before our conversation today, yes. You shared some things about yourself and about your life, and I'd like to get you to share that again with our listening audience, yes. Because again, we want to encourage people here at WYTV7. We want to be encouragers. Yes. We want to keep people, moving on in their missions in life, and though we might go through bumps and trials and tribulations, we want to keep them encouraged by letting them know our story. Letting them know that we didn't come out of the womb being successful in who we are today. No. So I'm going to give you space. And so if you'll just, let our listening audience know who you were before, who you are now.
Wow. Who I was before brought me to this. And God shaped me through many career paths, career choices, good and bad. I was raised Catholic. I was raised here in Baltimore. I was always an artist, always had something inside of me that wanted to give, was always the creative. And when I went to college, I found my place as a designer. My undergraduate, I graduated in clothing design and came back to Baltimore and realized that I was actually a costume designer. That took me to New York, that took me to theater. And while I was raised Catholic, when I went away to college, as happens to many people, you sort of step away from that spiritual side that you've been raised with. But the Bible says train up a child. So I came full circle. And when I came back to New York after those years working in theater, I felt something inside of me that was, I feel like it was a ripple. It was something that needed to give back. I'd been in theater. I knew what it meant to put on a show. I knew what it meant to be successful in the arts. But when I came back to Baltimore, I also came back having begun that path back to being drawn back to Christ, to the Lord, because in my later years in New York, I joined Riverside Church, and then I joined Brooklyn Tabernacle. And when I came back to Baltimore, that longing for something deep and spiritual started to manifest. And when I came back and joined church again, rededicated my life to the Lord and got water baptized, I was like, okay, well, I've done theater and I've done costuming. I've been introduced to social outreach and social issues in New York. How does this all come together? And so when I came back to Baltimore, I started what was my first nonprofit, which is a theater company that was to train youth and young adults who had issues with learning, maybe dropouts. And we ran that theater company for 2 seasons. And what we did there was we taught youth literacy, but it was connected to theater. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of me connecting my 9-to-5 type income related jobs to a social outreach purpose. Okay. And so that led me to say, oh, okay, I'm feeling the need to give back, and then that need to give back fulfills me. Amen. And so by that time I was in my 30s, and I had to say, okay, well, you know what, this theater is great and I really want to do this, but I do need a job. I do need to pay bills and I need to grow up. And so that's when I got that 9-to-5 job. It was in 1990s, and started working for the state, but always kept those other avenues for outreach open. I taught literacy for the reading partners. I did theater for church groups. And it all began to come together when one day a coworker of mine came, and she was soliciting funds for her pastor who was getting ready to go on a missions trip.
Okay, now before you do that, Vicki, what I want to take you back further first, because you're getting ready to talk about what we're going to talk about at the end of what you're doing now. Before you got there, I want to back you up to when you were growing up. Because something always in our past gives us a clue, whether we know it or not, of what we're going to be doing later. So let's go back to Vicki prior to college and all that you found in college. Let's go back in the house where you were brought up. Talk to us about that.
I was brought up loving parents. Mother was an educator. Father worked in the steel mill here in Baltimore. Back in the day, was a very productive area for Black men to have a good job working those blue collar jobs. So I had a great upbringing. I had what would be the classic Black version of the white picket fence life, and I had a great upbringing. Mm-hmm. I had 2 grandmothers who were influential in my life. And as it happened, my grandmothers were one single and one widowed. And when I was little, when my parents got married, okay, let me back up some more.
Okay.
When my parents got married, my father's side of the family was Catholic. Mm-hmm. My mother's side was Baptist, and I mean Baptist with pastors and churches. Back in those days, a non-Catholic could not marry a Catholic. So my mother had to convert to Catholicism. Okay. And so I was raised Catholic. On the weekends, my parents would take me to my grandmother's house, which is another sidebar, that when my parents got married, my father said, you know what, I have these 2 mothers essentially to take care of. They don't have men in their lives. I'm going to put them in the same house. So wow. My grandmothers lived together for as long as I've ever known. People find that strange, but it was just great. My 2 grandmothers lived together, so my father could take care of them. And on the weekends, I would go and stay there. And so being raised Catholic as I had to be, Sundays I would go to church with my grandmother, Marie. I called her Ree. She was Catholic. And it was just a joy. I'd go there on Friday nights, and Saturdays we would spend our days going down to Lexington Market, shopping the market, having lunch, which now as I think back, that was groundbreaking in itself, because I remember years later that at a shopping center that's not too far from my house, I remember the Morgan State students going in and integrating that lunch counter. And that was when I was an adolescent. But I'm remembering that as a child, my grandmother and I ate lunch in the Reed's drugstore downtown. So I'm like, how were we even allowed to do that? Because desegregation was still happening, but you know, she just had favor. We would go to lunch. She would buy me a book. I read a book every week. And we would come home. I would bake a cake. I just felt a nurturing from her that was just, it was just something that was so special. And when I would go to church on Sunday with her, there would be a feeling of the spirit. And when my parents moved my grandmother's closer to us years later as a teenager, I remember that Ree joined St. Mary's Catholic Church. I believe she desegregated the church. She had so many friends up there, mostly Caucasian, and they loved her, and she had just a spirit about her that as I got older, I began to recognize that that was something spiritual and something special that she had. And when I went away to college, one of the things that she did for me was she would sit, when I would come home, she would stock me up on all my paper goods for the 4 years that I was in college. And that was a sacrifice for her. Both of my grandmothers were domestic workers, so they didn't make a lot. So when I think back on where I saw service and outreach, where I saw giving of self with not expecting return, and giving of self with not having a lot, I see that that came from Ree.
Oh, now that was good. That was real good. And that's what I was digging for. I wanted to see how you were brought to where you were today. And so you actually took us to the end, and now you brought us back to the beginning, and that has been wonderful. Now, I want to remind our listening audience that I am Valerie Gilchrist, and this is Esthers Purpose, being broadcasted on WYTV7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. My guest today is Miss Vicki, and we've been enjoying listening to your story, Vicki. And so you're talking to us today about how you got from where you were to where you are now. I'd like to remind our audience to please go on to Facebook and like us at WYTV7. Also like Esthers Purpose. Follow us, share, send us messages. We want to hear from you about how you're just your life is being impacted by what we're sharing today. So, Miss Vicki, I thank you. And I had my notes sitting here, and I was hoping you would remember and go back to talking about your grandmother. Yeah. Because it's what encourages me is what happens in our young life, because there's always something inspirational, something, even if it's a small nugget, something that we grabbed onto, that we saw or heard in our young life that now catapulted us as adults into what we do now. So when you were talking about that she supplied paper products and, did all those kind of things that she did for people, and that she was, at church, and she was always spirit led, and that giving, and especially the giving with no expectation of return. Yeah. A lot of us, unfortunately, we give, but we always give with what I'm going to get in, in our mind. And typically from who we gave to, which is really not the motivation we need to have in our hearts, because we want to give, right? but we want to give to people who are in need. And what we do is we actually become a channel for the kingdom of God, right? So the more we give, the more is given unto us, not for us, but for us to be able to keep being that channel and giving.
Yes.
And so your grandmother instilled that in you, to be a giver, to see a need and be a giver. That is great. So keep talking about that.
I believe that we are blessed to be a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And people often say, I hear people saying, oh, I don't like my job. I need a new job. Oh, I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. I need to find, do something new. And they go from job to job, or they stay where they are and they're unfulfilled. And I always say, well, what is that thing that's inside of you that feeds you and that you feel you need to address? Because that's where you're going to find your satisfaction and your purpose. I remember years ago, Carolyn Showell, a really well-known evangelist in the Baltimore, D.C. area, said at a women's conference that thing that gives you pain about it, that's where, look there.
Yes.
See how you can address that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I call myself now a social entrepreneur. I started out and I went on mission trips. So I call myself a missionary, but what catapulted me to do Bahari is that, like 3 or so trips later, having gone to Kenya, giving ladies little bags of toiletries, it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
It was just giving. It wasn't expecting anything back, but it wasn't helping them. My purpose is to help people help themselves.
Yes.
And when I looked at these women who were speaking 3 languages and who were artisans, you say there, but by the grace of God go I, because we all have something to give. Everybody has something lacking, and we need to find our purpose. I just get very, I don't want to say annoyed, but it is annoyed with people who don't understand that we're here to give back and to do something in the world. And that's where we find our satisfaction. That's where we get our motivation. We may feel tired, but the Lord always restores us. He knows that if we rely on him, then we will be restored and we can give back. And
absolutely,
it's a reaction, because as we give to that person, then they give to another person.
Yes.
And there's a perpetual motion. There's a ripple effect.
Yes. And so you're literally sowing seeds into that person's life and into that community. So what I hear you say is that you help people help themselves.
Yes.
A lot of times, our heart is right, but a lot of times we'll help people stay crippled.
Yes.
Right. And and we don't know how to, just like the man who was at the gate. They brought him every day sitting at the gate and to beg for alms.
Yes.
They didn't teach him anything else. So all he knew was to keep begging for alms until the apostles came and he looked upon them and he saw something. There was something in him that made him look. And so he said, look upon us. Silver and gold have we none, but what we have, we're going to give it unto you, right? So we're going to give you empowerment to get up out of your situation.
Absolutely.
And that sounds like to me what you were doing. You were empowering people to prosper. And that's the kind of God we serve. He empowers us to prosper, right?
Yes.
And so that is so awesome. Now, I do want to remind our listening audience that this is WYTV7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. This is Esthers Purpose broadcast. I'm Valerie Gilchrist, and WYTV7 is a nonprofit organization. We do accept donations. If you would like to sow a seed, we would truly appreciate it. And just know that a seed will meet a need, no matter how small. $5 can go far. And just from what you're talking about, same thing, you've got that light passion. It doesn't have to be something big. It just has to, you just sow a seed into it that'll then empower and strengthen that person and let them know someone cares. So we love that. And so, we want to continue to impact lives here at WYTV7. So that money goes to broadcasting, not just nationally, but internationally. And we just thank you so much for sharing with us. And what I want to do is I want to give you an opportunity as we wind down a little bit, for what is it you want to tell everyone that's listening to you, something that you want to share with them that maybe they don't know what they're supposed to do yet. They don't know their why. They might not even remember the seed of it, like what you talked about your grandmother. How would you talk to them? All right, everybody, we had a little technical difficulty there for just a moment, but we did get Vicki back with us. And so we're going to let her continue talking about encouraging people who might not know what their purpose is in life. Go ahead, Vicki, and finish up what you were telling me.
Yes, I just want to conclude by saying that wherever people go, whatever experience you have in life, you can always use that and utilize that to help you find where your purpose is. You know, Rick Warren says the purpose-driven life. It's about using and utilizing those things, those experiences to find your purpose, and your purpose should help someone.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. And that I love what you just said. Your purpose should help somebody, not necessarily help you.
Right.
Now, if you get something in return from another source, not from that individual, that's fine. But whatever it is, it should be helping somebody else. Pull them out of wherever they are, or encourage them, or, bring healing or whatever is needed.
Yeah.
But I thank you so much, Vicki, for your sacrifice with us here today. I so enjoyed talking to you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you from beautiful, rainy Baltimore.
Yeah.
For this opportunity. And I just want to encourage people to please visit our website and see what we do. Give them the website. Give them your contact information, Vicki. The website is www.baharisisters.org. We have a Bahari Sisters Facebook page. And I am Bahari Sis on Twitter, and Vicki Speaks on Instagram. So you can follow what we do over there on any of those platforms. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. So I want to make sure that she's giving you all of her information, and I just want to remind everybody that my name is Valerie Gilchrist. This is Esther's Purpose broadcast on WYTV7. I want to make sure that you all follow us on WYTV7 and Esther's Purpose on Facebook. Message us, like us, follow us, talk to us, give us some feedback. Let us know how this broadcast has been a blessing to you and your family and generations to come. I just thank you so much again for your sacrifice and being with us today.
I really appreciate the platform. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And thank you, my listening audience. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.